The story begins with something so ordinary it should have gone unnoticed. A trash can placed a few hours too early at the curb. But in the upscale neighborhood of Aspen Hollow, this small oversight led to a series of events that shattered illusions, unmasked hidden power, and forever changed the lives of everyone involved. That morning, 67-year-old Henry Dalton lay unconscious on the driveway, a pool of blood forming beneath his head. His son, Jason Dalton, knelt beside him, shaking with disbelief and rage. What had happened was no accident. It was the result of a confrontation with Elaine Prescott, the neighborhood's notorious HOA president, a woman who saw herself not just as an enforcer of rules, but as a queen ruling her suburban kingdom. Aspen Hollow was supposed to be idyllic. Tree-lined streets, pristine lawns, friendly neighbors waving as they passed. But beneath the surface, the neighborhood operated more like a miniature dictatorship. And at the center of it all was Elaine, clipboard always in hand, eyes constantly scanning for the tiniest infraction. Elaine wasn't content with ensuring the grass was cut or the garbage bins hidden. She wanted control, total and unquestioned. The mailbox had to be black, not navy. The garden gnome? Too whimsical. Flags? Only American, and only on designated holidays. She ruled with fines, threats, and veiled intimidation. Her idea of a well-maintained neighborhood was one where people obeyed without question. Jason had lived in Aspen Hollow for years. On the surface, he was just another homeowner, quiet, polite, always keeping to himself. But Jason had secrets. Beneath his unassuming demeanor, he was a real estate tycoon who owned more than half of the homes in the neighborhood. Through shell companies and trusts, he had slowly acquired 28 of the 52 properties, including Elaine's. And he never said a word. Jason never liked to flex his influence. His investments were long-term plays, and he saw no reason to stir the pot. Until Elaine pushed too far. It started with Mrs. Klein, an elderly widow who had placed a small bird bath in memory of her late husband. Elaine deemed it unsanctioned yard decor and demanded its removal. Then came the Ramirez family, fined for the wheelchair-accessible ramp they had installed for their son. The Prescotts were next, harassed for their Diwali decorations. Elaine enforced the rules selectively, letting her friends slide while punishing others with draconian precision. Jason kept notes. He documented her double standards, her abuses of power, and the community's growing resentment. But he stayed quiet, waiting. When Henry Dalton offered to help his son by taking the trash cans to the curb, he followed the rules to the letter. But Elaine showed up anyway, her voice sharp as steel. "You're in violation. Trash day is tomorrow. That's the $150 fine." Henry, ever the gentleman, tried to reason with her. "I didn't know. I'll bring them back right now." Elaine smirked. "That's not how this works. The fine stands." But when Henry reached for the bin, Elaine shoved him. She may have meant it as a minor gesture, but Henry, caught off guard, lost his balance. He fell backward, his head hitting the pavement with a crack that echoed in Jason's mind long after the ambulance had arrived. At the hospital, Jason sat beside his father, hand in hand, as monitors beeped steadily. The concussion would heal, the doctors said. The stitches would fade. But for Jason, this was no longer about fines or rules. This was war. As word of the incident spread, neighbors began to talk. Quietly at first, then openly. Messages poured into Jason's inbox. Stories of intimidation, abuse, racism, and fear. One by one, residents shared how they'd been humiliated or unfairly fined. Mrs. Chun, fined for her cultural lanterns. The Nguyen's, reprimanded for speaking Vietnamese outside. The Carvers, who were told their child's autism therapy swing violated aesthetics. Jason knew what he had to do. An emergency HOA meeting was called. Elaine expected to spin the narrative, but she didn't know what Jason had in store. The community center was packed that night. Jason walked in with his father, whose head was still wrapped in bandages. The room went silent. Elaine tried to speak, calling the assault a misunderstanding. Jason stood. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. You assaulted my father. And tonight we talk about consequences." Then, With calm precision, Jason unveiled the truth. You all know me as Jason Dalton, your quiet neighbor. What you don't know is that I am the principal owner of Falcon Ridge Holdings. Through this company and its subsidiaries, I own 28 properties in Aspen Hollow, including the home of our HOA president. Gasps filled the room. Jason connected his laptop to a projector. Deeds, ownership records, LLC filings, it was all there displayed for everyone to see. He showed how Elaine had misused HOA funds, issued selective fines, and retaliated against anyone who spoke up. Neighbors sat stunned as he played audio recordings of Elaine threatening residents. He showed security footage of her removing decorations from yards, harassing delivery drivers, even yelling at children for chalk drawings on sidewalks. Then came the audit. Jason had quietly hired forensic accountants. The results were damning. Over $220,000 in HOA funds had been misappropriated. Elaine and 2 other board members had used the HOA credit card for personal purchases, spa visits, flights, electronics, and even a $4,000 massage chair. The room turned on Elaine. Residents stood up, one after another, sharing their stories. Mr. Klein, Mrs. Klein's son, spoke with tears in his eyes. The Ramirez parents, the Nguyen's, the Carvers, all spoke. Each voice added weight to the avalanche of accountability. Jason moved to the final point. As majority property owner, I hereby exercise my voting rights to remove Elaine Prescott from the HOA board. Effective immediately. The room erupted in applause. Elaine tried to leave, but 2 uniformed officers entered the room. She was placed under arrest for assault and misappropriation of funds. Handcuffed and silent, she was led out of the building as the neighbors she had once ruled overwatched with quiet satisfaction. With Elaine gone, a new board was elected that same night. Jason declined the presidency, choosing instead to serve as an advisor. His father, Henry, was nominated to help lead a new community outreach initiative. The mood shifted. Walls came down. Neighbors introduced themselves, laughed together, and shared plans for a neighborhood potluck. The ridiculous rules were scrapped. The HOA's charter was rewritten. Violations were no longer handed out like candy. Instead, the new leadership focused on real issues: safety, maintenance, and fostering community. The forensic audit led to restitution. Elaine and her accomplices were court-ordered to repay the misused funds, with liens placed on their properties. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. As weeks passed, Aspen Hollow transformed. Children played without fear of reprimand. Elderly residents gardened freely. People began to look each other in the eye, to smile, to trust. Jason kept a photo of his father in the community garden, the place Henry helped start with neighborhood kids. It reminded him that change begins with courage, even if it starts with something as simple as a trash can place too early. In the end, it wasn't just a story about power or rules. It was a story about standing up when it matters, about challenging the systems that harm instead of help, and about rediscovering what community truly means.